What is up, YouTube? We are back to go ahead and take the LCD out of this Galaxy S3 project. So a couple of things that we're going to need is some playing cards. This is the easiest method for me to remove these screens. We'll need a heat gun as well, and then a infrared thermometer. The goal is to get the back of this hot and loosen the adhesive that pulls the screen onto the back. You don't want to get it roughly around 180 degrees. That'll give you the right amount of kind of elasticity in the adhesive on the front to go ahead and start removing the screen. This is a pretty tedious process and tricky on the Galaxy S3. It's probably the hardest one that I've had to do this on. I've done a couple of others, the Note 2 that I'll be posting soon, and it seems like that one was a lot easier than the Galaxy S3 for some reason. It always seems like these have a lot of adhesive, or maybe even a stickier adhesive on the back of them than some of the other phones. So we're going to go ahead and get this nice and hot. You can see we're roughly at 180. If you take the heat gun away, you can see that it drops just a little bit. That should be good enough for us. So we're going to go ahead and use our playing card. Here at the top of the LCD is there's no cables here. We're just going to slide it in, try to angle it towards the in towards the LCD. You don't want to push a lot of pressure in, and the goal towards these first few wipes is to get the glue to kind of push away from underneath the LCD here. Once you get the playing card in a little bit, it's a little less fragile, but these corners are a little tricky. You want to give it a decent amount of pressure, but you don't want to necessarily force the card underneath. You just want to try to get it started nice and slow. If a corner on the card bends, just go ahead and try to use another corner and cut down on wasting so many cards. I will usually cut them into pieces and then use other sides of the card to help get us started here. Just kind of cut these corners off. And I'll try a few different methods on different phones to see if I can get a better insertion of the card in there. So we're going to go ahead and we've lost a lot of our heat, so we're going to go ahead and start again. Remember, we want to get it roughly around 180. Getting 190 wouldn't necessarily hurt your screen, but you don't want to get over 200, and it seems like that's when it starts to do a little bit of damage. Really the goal is the main thing is at the front of the screen you have your polarizing film. You don't want to yellow or crack that. Just start to burn it. And you do have some electronics that are stuck to the back of the LCD. Now before you attempt this, I would suggest watching this video all the way through, and I'll show you where a few of the cables are on the back of this LCD that you want to be careful with. Now I'm going nice and slow on the front of these S3s, as I've had a couple that I've kind of chipped the corners on, and so I take these a lot slower than I do some of the other phones. You might realize as you watch a couple of the other videos of removing the LCD from the frame here. Now you could technically replace the frame or just replace the glass without taking the LCD out, but I want to change the entire frame of this phone as it had a lot of dings and scratches and nicks and actually has a crack in it, and replace it with a new one. And to do so, you have to take this glass or this LCD all the way out. So we go nice and slow. You don't want to rush it. This is a patient process during this part of the repair. You'll see me repeatedly heat it up and make sure that the phone's nice and hot. We're going to go ahead and just cut the corners off this card again as they're a little bit bent. Cut it to a sharper point and give it a nice amount of heat again. Get it back into that 180 mark. Alright, go ahead and stick this card back underneath here. And I got a little bit sharper points. See if that'll give us a little bit better edge. Now I like to get started right towards the middle of the phone is where I want to insert the card the hardest at first, as it seems that if you start at some of the edges, you get a little easier to kind of crack the LCD. So I try to start in the middle. At least that's my thought process when I've been doing these phones. And it seems like when I've cracked one in the past, I've gotten a little impatient, and I've tried to insert the card really tough into the bottom of the phone, and that's where things start to go wrong. So I give it an even amount of pressure to the point where I don't want the card to bend with force, like kind of like fold in on itself, but enough pressure where you feel some resistance from the phone itself, enough to dull the corners of the card. This is being especially tricky. Just checking the temp, I'll have to give it a little bit more heat here. Get it nice and warm, and we'll go ahead and try with this card, just kind of cut the corners off of it. You can see this card is starting to fold a little bit, which is not necessarily the best sign. I probably should switch my card here real quick. I'm trying to get the most out of these. It seems like I never remember to purchase cards, and so I try to make them last a little bit longer. Let's start to see we make a little bit of progress. You can see the card's inserting a little bit further underneath. And it kind of almost has a fabric adhesive on the back of this, like a fabric matte adhesive, which is why it's a little bit tricky to pull out than just like 3M sticky tape. Get it nice and warm again. It does take a little bit of time to get the card started in, and once you start that and you get the adhesive to start to break up, it goes a lot faster after that point. I just can't seem to get this one to work for me. But again, not getting impatient and taking your time is key with this process, especially if you're doing your first one. Give me a little bit better point here. So you got stuck in there a little bit. That's a good sign. That means we're getting the card to work its way in. A decent surface area here. I can feel a little bit of adhesive underneath the screen, kind of pulling the card, so that's a good sign. Let's kind of work on one side to a degree here. Get some more heat on this. This is being a real bugger. Just not working for me. I don't want to skip through anything because I want to show you guys exactly how this goes and how long the process can take. Get a nice amount of heat on here again. You don't have to use playing cards. I've used a couple of other items. Some thicker plastic paper has worked well for me. I find that playing cards are probably the best mix with the plastic coating and the paper. They give the right amount of flex. And I saw a video of somebody using some really thin flexible metal, which kind of made me a little bit nervous on doing this. I'm not sure that I'd want to use metal on it. I feel like that would really damage, or easier to damage the LCD. But if you have something that's nice and pliable, that may be an option for you as well. Now I'm just running through the cards here. Just can't seem to get this corner started down here, which is normally the way it starts. And it's made some progress, but we're hitting kind of a wall here. You might be able to find some other techniques on how to do this through the XDA forums, which I find to be very helpful if I get stuck or I'm trying to find out information. XDA forums is usually a good place to go if you can't find any other videos on it or anything. They will usually have some hints or tricks if you do the right Google search. Get it nice and hot again. Normally it takes me about half the time to get into a phone than this one particularly, but this one is just being a real tricky one. And like I said, you want to make sure that you're very patient when you're doing this. Too much force and getting impatient can really ruin your LCD. You see, we're making some good progress here. See, as we get towards the corners here, you can see that the card's starting to dig in to a degree. I got a little forceful there. I was a little concerned that I might have possibly have cracked it. Just checking to see if there's any play there. I'm really feeling some resistance on this card, so I can see that it's actually getting in there. And now that we got it started, we're going to go ahead and heat it up with the card inside. Only took me about 15 minutes to get that card started, so a little bit trickier than some of the other ones, but a good video to show you how long sometimes it can take to get this process going. Let's slide this back and forth. Get the corner in there, start to kind of cut that adhesive away. You slide it back and forth until you make some good progress. We'll use another card here. Now we've got the LCD lifted up a little bit and try to get it towards the other corner of the AMOLED here. We lost a little bit of heat, so we're going to go ahead and heat it up again. And I find it's really important to keep it a higher degree of temperature as you get the card in. When you start to move it down, you can use a slicing method here to kind of cut through the adhesive to a degree with the card. If you move it back and forth kind of like a knife would, you'll see that it starts to make some progress as you move it down. Now, one of the tricks is as you move the cards down the side of the phone here, you want to give it a pretty decent amount of force, but not to the point where the card is starting to warp. That's the trick. Now, as you get towards the bottom or where the buttons are at, you'll have to be very careful of your LCD cable. And you don't want to push the card all the way through the very top, as that will show you where your digitizer attaches at as well. And the cable that comes through the rear side of the phone. Let's kind of push this down the phone here. Use a bigger card to get more leverage. Get a little bit more heat on the LCD now, or the LED. And not focusing just on the bottom, but getting heat all the way around in the shape of the kind of the tape pattern on the back of the phone. And just using our playing card to go around the sides. Just try to move it kind of back and forth down both sides of the phone to get an even separation of the glue on both sides. Get a little bit more heat going on here. Feeling a lot of resistance, so we'll go ahead and give it back up to that 180 to 90 degree temperature on here. Just wiggle the card back and forth. And that'll help you get that glue separation. Make sure the glue is all the way separate to the middle of the phone. And you see me come down towards the edge here, and I'll stop right above where the ED connectors is to the main board. You want to be very careful of that. You may think to yourself it's just a playing card, but the other day I was replacing the screen on an iPad 2, and I cut the cable with one of these cards, the digitizer. So you want to be nice and gentle as you go through this, and make sure you stop just short of that cable. You can see right where the card stopped is right where the cable comes out on that side, so you would be nice and careful right there. Get it back up to that temperature. Just giving it a decent amount of force as we push this through. You want to be very careful not to overdo it though. Be nice and take your time. And one of the trickier things is not to pull up on the LCD. You don't want it to pull up, you just want to push. And as you cut that adhesive away, it'll kind of slide itself out. When it starts to get a little bit more flappy loose, you can see that we made a pretty decent amount of progress there. And once it starts to get this kind of loose here, you can kind of push the screen away. We're going to pull through the LCD connector there, and you can see that now it is out. You can see that the way that this was taped onto the back, you have that gold tape and that silver tape right in the middle, and you have that fabric tape around in a U shape all the way around the outside of the phone. And we're just going to try to take a quick look at this, make sure it's still functional. We have our logic board. It's going to connect our LED connector here. Put our battery in. Make sure that it's still functional before we go any further. So if for some reason we cracked it, we don't want to waste our time of trying to get this glued back together. So we're going to have to, unfortunately, connect a power charger to this, as it's dead. See, that's a good sign that the battery charge came up there for a second. And we're just going to press this here, and alright, here we go. We have this starting up for us. The screen's in great condition. Everything seems to be looking good. And it's not going to want to power on for us because of how completely drained the battery is. But knowing how many of these I've done, I can tell you right now that everything's going to function correctly for us. If the screen is fully functional, there's no bleeding, there's no cracks in it, then we are pretty much set. The next step of this is going to be using the liquid optical adhesive and the mold that I have to go ahead and glue the new piece of glass to this LED. And then we can go ahead and tape and reassemble the phone for us. So if you want to watch those continuing portions of this complete change of this phone, go ahead and click the link below, and that'll take you to the next video in this series. Oh, here we go. It did power on all the way for us. And just looking at it, you can see that the touchscreen is functional for us. So everything did work out completely as planned. Again, like the video if you found this helpful, and I appreciate you guys watching my channel. Thanks again, and I'll see you guys on the next video. Our LOCA glue.